Teron Armstead was at the very top, followed by Von Miller, then J.C. Jackson. But like I said, these are the big ones. Sometimes it's the smaller ones that could really help a team. So let's welcome in our trio of experts today. We have two-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden, also part of the Pick Six podcast, Ryan Wilson and John Breach. Guys, we're going to start in the NFC West and the defending Super Bowl champs, the Rams. Ryan, we'll start with you. The biggest underrated move the Rams made during free agency.
Well, first things first, Amanda. Look, I see B-Mac with his nice hair, no gray hairs anywhere. Now he's wearing glasses are my look, B-Mac. I don't have any hair. I got nothing else going for me. You're trying to steal my look. Give me a break. Just give me something. So that's all I got there. That's overrated move by B-Mac trying to steal my look. Next time I'm going to show up in a wig, see how that goes. So here's what I'm going to do with the Rams. Joseph Noteboom, he wasn't signed from another team. He was re-upped, and that was incredibly important because Andre Whitworth retired after playing to age 40, formerly of the Bengals, finally got to that Super Bowl with the Rams and won it there and called it a career on a high note. They have Rob Havenstein on the right side, and the thing about Noteboom is he can play inside. He's played left guard before. He can play right tackle. He can play left tackle. Played it at a high level in replacement of Whitworth when he was injured for spells. And I think that's incredibly important when you're talking about Matthew Stafford on that long-term deal. And this team playing in that incredibly tough division. The good news is when you're in the NFC, there's not a lot of competition once you get out of that division. There's the Packers. We'll see how they are with Devontae Adams, of course, now in Las Vegas. But I think getting Noteboom back was incredibly important to help them get back to the Super Bowl, which is obviously going to be the plan for them once the season starts in September.
Well, for me, I'm going to keep it with the offensive line. I'm going to keep it right there with the offensive line. I'm going Brian Allen. He won the starting job a year ago, played well in that role. We all know how important the center-quarterback relationship is, and clearly Matthew Stafford loves the game that Brian Allen has been able to put on display. He's a great communicator on the offensive line. And Ryan, you talked about losing one of your best offensive linemen in Whitworth, being able to get Noteboom and Brian Allen back to solidify the offensive line. I think they still need to address maybe the guard positions as well. But I really love this move because the center is very, very important, not just to the quarterback, but to the entire offense. They communicate, they get everyone lined up, call out the blitz concepts here or there. And Brian Allen did a great job in doing so. And get this, they did not have to break the bank to retain his services.
All right, let's go to the Cardinals. John, I want to put this one to you because both Ryan and B-Mac liked re-signing deals there for the Rams. And it's somebody who's staying with the Cardinals as well that you like.
Yeah, it is. And it's not Kyler Murray because they haven't upped his contract yet. When you talk about the Cardinals free agency, that's all anyone's been talking about for the past 2 months is the fact that there's so much drama between the team and Kyler Murray. Deleted off the Instagram. Cardinals haven't made any huge moves bringing in players in free agency. But I do think their most underrated signing was getting Zach Ertz back under contract. Remember, they traded for him back in October, the 2021 season. He came in and was an instant impact on that offense. He was a security blanket for Kyler Murray, despite the fact that he only played in 11 games because he arrived after week 5. He still finished third on the team in receiving yards. He's their number 1 returning receiver in 2022. We know that obviously DeAndre Hopkins is going to be back, but guess what? Zach Ertz finished with more receiving yards in 2021 than Hopkins did. So this was a guy, you're already got an upset quarterback. You don't want to upset him anymore, so you need to make sure you're bringing back some of his weapons because we already saw the Cardinals let Christian Kirk go, let Chase Edmonds go. So getting Zach Ertz back under contract, I think, was a huge deal for them.
The Cardinals, the third favorite to win the division at plus 320. Let's go up to the 49ers. B-Mac, I am just so surprised. I hope you read it all over my face that you're going with a member of the secondary.
All right, no surprise at all, Amanda. But this is a very, very huge, significant signing for the San Francisco 49ers. And the player I'm going with, Charvarius Ward. Talented, up-and-coming, ascending corner from the Kansas City Chiefs. They gave him a nice deal, 3-year, $40 million plus, if I'm not mistaken, around 27 guaranteed. But the reason why this is a huge move that no one is really talking about, they have been searching for a bona fide number 1 corner for quite some time. They tried to see what happened with Richard Sherman towards the end of his career, gave them some pretty good production. But since then, they've been really missing that number 1 guy. And a number 1 corner is something they need to have. It's a necessity when you're playing against the likes of Cooper Kupp Allen Robertson, DK Metcalf, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, Ward has started over 40 games in his 4-year career. I really like his makeup and his fit in DeMeco Ryans' defensive scheme, and I think this thing will pan out nicely for the organization and for the player.
All right, let's go to the Seahawks. No more Russell Wilson. It's very gray. It's very rainy there. Not sure if it's the rain or tears streaming down their face. John, bring some light to the Seahawks. What move do you like that they made?
I heard that subtle knock on me, Amanda. Gray? Is it because of the gray hair in my beard? Is that what we're talking about
you
here?
You guys are very taking things personal today. Ryan with the glasses, John with the gray. No, go ahead.
Well, you know what? Apparently, BMAC has brainwashed me because I am also going with a cornerback here. I think the Seahawks' biggest, most underrated offseason move was re-signing Sidney Jones. Look, they traded Jacksonville. He arrived from Jacksonville in September. He came in. He wasn't expected to be a starter, but due to a couple injuries, he ended up starting a good chunk of the season, and he played really well. So he was kind of an unexpected surprise for the Seahawks. And look, when you can get a corner who's potentially going to be a starter for you under contract for under $4 million, that's a downright steal, and that's what the Seahawks did here. Plus, they lost DJ Reed to the New York Jets in free agency, so they absolutely needed to make sure they brought someone back in the secondary. So I thought re-signing Sidney Jones was a smart move by the Seahawks.
Yeah, I agree, Breach. I think you're exactly right. And you could say Quandre Diggs perhaps is an option, but he got a 3-year, $40 million deal. And if you look at that roster in terms of the cornerback position, there is not much there. They signed Artie Burns in free agency to a 1-year deal. He struggled with Pittsburgh as a first-round pick. He struggled in Chicago, so he's not going to be a quick fix there. They have Ugo Amadi, who plays mostly the slot. They have Justin Coleman. All three of those guys that I mentioned, their contracts will be up after this season. So I think going out there and get Sidney Jones, who played really well both against the run and the pass, is important to start to rebuild that secondary. Jamal Adams is still there in those 2 first-round picks that it cost Seattle to get him. He has yet to pan out and live up to those expectations. Maybe that happens this year, but they need someone like Sidney Jones as well at the cornerback position as they start to rebuild it in what clearly looks like an overall rebuilding process now that Russ has gone to Denver.
Let's jump from the NFC West over to the AFC West. Let's start with the Chiefs. BMAC, we've been so focused on them losing Tyreek Hill. They do have Juju now, who they got in free agency, but there's also another move you like.
No question. Underrated move for me on the defensive side. Remember signing Juju? That was the most talked about signing for the Kansas City Chiefs. But me personally, Justin Reed is a huge get for them. And here's why. I just talked about them losing Ward, the talented corner, to the San Francisco 49ers. But you know who else they lost in that secondary? Tyrann Mathieu and Daniel Sorensen. So looking at what Justin Reed could provide, he might not give the name recognition and accolades of a Tyrann Mathieu, but he plays big-time football. He's a tackling machine. He has nice ball skills. And the thing that I love most about Justin Reed is the energy. And you better believe they better have energy in the secondary when you look at the quarterback play they will see, along with the star power at the receiver positions as well. The AFC West, if you don't have a nice, sound, structured secondary, you will stumble, you will have issues winning ball games. And I think trying to get a guy like Justin Reed not only improves the secondary, but mostly will improve the defense.
Let's go to the Raiders. Of course, the biggest move for them by far was Davante Adams. That was a trade. John, let's look at free agency. What underrated move are we not talking about enough?
Yeah, obviously this is underrated signing, so I'm not going to bring up Chandler Jones. That was their biggest signing of the offseason. I'm going to go with Brandon Bolden. I know what everyone's thinking. The Raiders don't need more running backs. Did they sign Kenyon Drake last year and that blew up in their face? They already have Josh Jacobs. But the reason I think the Brandon Bolden move is underrated is because it's going to keep him with Josh McDaniels. Look, Brandon Bolden spent 8 of his past 9 years in New England, where Josh McDaniels was the offensive coordinator. So now you're going to be playing in an offense you're already familiar with a coach who knows how to use you. If you look at what Bolden did in the Patriots offense last season, he had a career-high 405 receiving yards. He was a weapon out of the backfield. He was Mac Jones's security blanket, and I think that's what we're going to see in Las Vegas. When Derek Carr is not throwing deep to Davante Adams, I think we're going to see Brandon Bolden get used out of the backfield, and so I think McDaniels is going to make good use of him in that Raiders offense.
This division so stacked. The Raiders actually the longest odds to win right now at plus 650. We find the Chargers at plus 250 tied with the Broncos. Let's go to the Chargers. Ryan, you like another weapon for Justin Herbert?
Yeah, man, just a clarification on Breach there. I consider myself Mac Jones' security blanket, so just be sure to say that going forward. I am the Mac Jones bandwagon leader. Here we go. The Chargers, they signed Gerald Everett, the tight end, who played last year at Seattle, and he had a really good season in Seattle, even though there was a lot of goings-on with Russ Wilson and him trying to get out of town and being injured and all that. But the thing about Gerald Everett is he replaces what they lost in Jared Cook. He's 5 or 6 years younger. Jared Cook's 34, still a free agent. Last year, Jared Cook had 48 receptions, 564 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That's similar to the production we got from Gerald Everett last year in Seattle, and the year before that with the Rams and Jared Goff, where he had 41 catches for 417 yards and another touchdown. And he has athleticism. He has that ability to control the middle of the field. And you talk about pairing him with guys like Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, who's coming into year 2 after a really good rookie season, the wide receiver out of Tennessee. And we heard B-Mac talk about Justin Reed being in that Chiefs defense because there's so many weapons you have to guard against. Gerald Everett will be another one in a long line of tight ends in that AFC West that now include Travis Kelce and, of course, Darren Waller. I think we see Gerald Everett get a lot of use and perhaps surprise some people in terms of how productive he ends up being.
All right, let's go to the now Russell Wilson-led Broncos. Both John and B-Mac have somebody that they like. B-Mac, just go ahead. Tell us about the corner.
Well, I got to keep it in the secondary once again, Amanda. And no, I am not biased. I'm just being honest right here.
If you have to say you're not biased, how many times?
I'm not biased, Amanda. I'm not. I'm just fair and I'm honest. That's it. But one of the more underrated signings for the Denver Broncos is on the defensive side. One of the more talented, consistent slot corners in the National Football League, Kwan Williams from the San Francisco 49ers. This was a huge get, and here's why. Number one, you continue to add positive, sound players to your defense, the defense that I loved a year ago. Number two, in that division, let's look at some of the slot wide receivers he will see. Hunter Renfrow, right? Keenan Allen, who oftentimes line up in the slot. And now Juju Smith-Schuster being added to the Kansas City Chiefs. We know he does a lot of his damage in the slot. You better have a nice, sound slot corner that can defend and do it in a timely fashion. And Mr. Williams has done that throughout his time in San Francisco. And this was a huge, huge get for the Denver Broncos, not to mention what they're doing defensively. But like I said, when you look at the star power that they will see in their division with slot wide receivers, Mr. Williams will have his hands full, but he's ready for the task.
Yeah, and the AFC West has turned to an offensive arms race. So if you want to slow down these offenses, you do have to bring in these sound, talented defensive players. And I'm with B-Mac on two things. I think the underrated signing comes from someone from the 49ers and is on the defensive side of the ball, except I'm not going with the same guy as B-Mac. I'm going with DJ Jones. Look, if you want to compete in the AFC West against quarterbacks like Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Derek Carr, you have to be able to get after the passer, and that's something that DJ Jones is going to be able to do on the interior of the defensive line for the Broncos. He had a spectacular season, if not an underrated season last year for the 49ers. 10 tackles for a loss, 2 sacks. We already have a Broncos defense that can get after the passer, and Jones is only going to add to that. And like B-Mac said, now they've got the slot corner. They've got a defensive line who can get after the passer. The Broncos defense is going to be tough in 2022.
All right, guys, hang on just a second. We're going through all 32 teams, the most underrated moves they made in free agency. I do want to mention our own B-Mac and all of his fancy glasses. They have you covered on all things covered. B-Mac, his cousin, Patrick Peterson, their latest episode, Casey Hayward joining them, talking about Deshaun Watson nearly becoming a Falcon, also Aaron Rodgers' greatness, and how it was a challenging past season with the Raiders. Oh, sure. You got Joe Burrow, you got the talent to get to the Super Bowl, but what moves have the Bengals made this offseason so they don't look like that, just absolutely devastated on the sideline? I hope our producer said Bengals sad video. That is what we want to show. Taking a look at the result of a team that went to the Super Bowl and lost. Only the Patriots, losing Super Bowl 52, have gone back to win the next one in Super Bowl 53. But maybe the Bengals can do it this year. Let's welcome back our guys, Brian McFadden, John Wilson. I do this. I'm doing this all the time now. I'm switching names. Ryan Wilson and John Breach. Let's talk about the Bengals. John, you were there. You were in tears. We talked to you about it before we came onto the show. What moves specifically have the Bengals made that could leave you happy at the end of next season?
Well, we all know the one thing they had to fix this offseason was their offensive line so that Joe Burrow wasn't left in tears after each game, and they did that. So I am not counting those as under the radar signings because those were absolutely vital to what the Bengals had to do this offseason. That was their biggest need. For me, my biggest under the radar move for Cincinnati was re-signing BJ Hill on the defensive line. He was a vital part of that defense's resurgence in 2021. I mean, they were horrible in 2020. And then the Bengals traded the Giants, brought BJ Hill in. You just look at what he did in the AFC Championship game against Patrick Mahomes. He sacked him once. He had a huge interception that turned the game around in the second half. And not to mention, the Bengals let Larry Ogunjobi walk in free agency, and so you couldn't lose your two big defensive linemen. They brought B.J. Hill back, and he should be a big factor once again in 2022 as they get back to the Super Bowl for the second straight year.
Would you go?
Oh.
Yeah, undoubtedly he would go.
I already have my flight booked.
Let's go to the Steelers. I will mention a very, very distant fourth favorite to win this division. Ryan, right now you have them taking a wide receiver in Treylon Burks in the draft, your latest mock draft, CBSSports.com. But what move or under the radar move have they made in free agency like?
I'm going with James Daniel, the interior offensive lineman out of Chicago. They signed him to the biggest free agency deal in Steelers history, so maybe that doesn't sound very underrated, but he plays along the offensive line. Not a lot of folks outside of Chicago know about him, and he's a huge upgrade to what they struggled with last year. 2018, he was a second-round pick. He plays left guard. He can play right guard. He played some center early in his career in Chicago and at Iowa, where he went to college. And if you watch any Steelers games last year, your biggest takeaway had to be that Roethlisberger probably should retire after the year, in part because no one could protect him. He was running for his life as much as he could run. The running game struggled. Najee Harris still had the season he had. But if you bring in someone like James Daniel, and you can sort out the center position, and they signed Mason Cole to hopefully do that as well, get some guys back healthy, now you have something here. They could draft a guy or two in the second round if they so desired to help the offensive line as well. But I think James Daniel, who was one of the most coveted of the offensive linemen to hit free agency, for him to land in Pittsburgh is a huge get for them and a huge get for Mitch Trubisky, their new quarterback.
Well, my underrated signing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, let's transition to the defensive side. Myles Jack. I love this move for multiple reasons. But number one, the main reason why I love this move, guys, is because hopefully he can jumpstart Devin Bush Jr. to getting back to the player that we saw before the injury during his rookie campaign. I do believe both players will coexist nicely in this defense. 3-down linebacker, a tackling machine. He's a guy that's very, very athletic. And if you go back and you look at some of the more dominating, consistent defenses that we've seen in Steelers history, they've had two outstanding inside linebackers that played nicely alongside each other. I believe this will be a huge year for Myles Jack, and I think he can potentially jumpstart Devin Bush Jr. to getting back to the player that we saw before that injury. And if that happens, look out, John Breach, Cincinnati, look out, Cleveland, look out, Baltimore. Yeah, a lot of people will be crying this year if that happens, including you again, John. I'm sorry, but you can cry me a river. Shout out to Justin Timberlake.
John, do you need to say anything, or are we just going to let that go?
Well, unless the Steelers are going to trade for another quarterback, I'm not really too worried about Pittsburgh winning that division.
Everybody's going to be okay. Let's go to the Browns. B-Mac, I want to toss this back to you. Thank you so much for talking about your former team and another defensive player. The Browns, they now have Deshaun Watson. And B-Mac, you're throwing us a curveball. You're talking about an offensive player, and it's a quarterback, and it's not Deshaun.
It's not Deshaun, no question. The most underrated signing for the Cleveland Browns is signing Jacoby Brissett. And here's why. The likelihood of Deshaun Watson getting suspended and missing time is highly likely. We just don't know when, and we just don't know how many games he will miss. But think about this. If Jacoby Brissett just can weather the storm while Deshaun is gone, playing sound football, being smart with the football, keeping them within the playoff conversation, and then when Deshaun is back, everything is riding real good, this would be a huge get for the Cleveland Browns. And I think that's why they've made sure They were strategic in who they signed to be the backup quarterback behind Deshaun Watson. And I'm making this pick under the assumption that Baker Mayfield will not be there when the season starts. And I think we all believe that as well. But right now, looking at all the top signing players they brought in, this has to be the most underrated signing because Deshaun Watson will be suspended. We don't know when, we don't know how many games, but when he is suspended, guess what? All the pressure will lie on Jacoby Brissett's plate, and let's see if he can handle it.
Let's go to the Ravens here. We're just going to assume that BMAC loves adding Marcus Williams. That was also not really under the radar there, underrated. Ryan, we'll start with you. What move do you like?
I like the addition of Morgan Moses, the offensive tackle. Last year before the season, the Ravens traded Orlando Brown Jr. to the Chiefs. He wanted a big money deal. The Ravens weren't prepared to give it to him, so they traded him for draft picks, and they were left with a revolving door at right tackle. They had 4 players man the position. All 4 players either will move elsewhere on the line or have retired. I'm thinking about Alejandro Villanueva there, the former Steeler. So Morgan Moses provides some much-needed stability. He started 113 consecutive games. That's second among all active offensive tackles as we sit here, and that will certainly help that offense, which struggled at times. Obviously, not having the quarterback was a concern, but if Lamar Jackson is telling the truth, and I have no reason to think he's not in terms of wanting to stay in Baltimore, let's get that offensive line sorted out. You have Ronnie Stanley on the left side, the former first-round pick. You have Morgan Stanley offering some stability. You can even draft another one in the first round at pick 14 if you want to, but I love the signing of Moses. It's underrated because no one was talking much about it. It was a pretty good deal in terms of what the Ravens had to pay for it, and you have someone you can pencil in right away and for the entirety of the season.
Let's jump over to the NFC North. Let's go to the Packers. No more Devontae Adams, but they are still the heavy favorite to win the division. John, underrated move that the Packers made.
Yeah, not only did they trade away Devontae Adams, but they gave Aaron Rodgers a contract that's worth $50 million per year. So some people might be wondering how they have any money left to sign anybody else, but they did. And my most under-the-radar move for Green Bay was re-signing Rasul Douglas in the secondary. Look, as long as last season wasn't a fluke, I think this is a brilliant move because they got him under contract for under $7 million per year. But the problem is, we don't know how good he is. Look, this is a guy who got cut by the Texans. He got cut by the Raiders. But you know what? The Texans, they don't know how to judge talent. He ended up in Green Bay. He played 9 games with the Packers. And despite that, he still led the team in interceptions with 5. So he had a big season, even though he was only there for half the year. You put him back in that secondary with Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, and that's a strong trio at corner. So I thought this was a smart move by Green Bay.
BMAC, what about the Vikings?
Ooh, defensively. I mean, looking at this defense right now, the players they have assembled, some of the guys that's returning, along with some of the additions, it has to be Jordan Hicks. The likelihood of us seeing Anthony Barr in a Vikings uniform is not likely, and because of that, adding Jordan Hicks is a huge get. He's a 3-down linebacker, a tackling machine. You look at Eric Kendricks, who's already there, one of the best linebackers in the league. Adding Jordan Hicks will make this defense even more explosive, fast, and more consistent. Over the last 3 years, in total tackles, he's had at least 116 total tackles in the last 3 seasons. And in 2019, he had a whopping 149 when it comes to total tackles. This is a guy that doesn't miss a lot of tackles. He plays fast, he plays aggressive, and I think he will fit nicely with that defense, the new scheme they have there with the Vikings. So I'm going Jordan Hicks.
Brian, let's go to the Bears here. Somebody who's 28, but actually coming off his best season yet.
Yeah, and that's great news for Justin Fields because Justin Fields is going to have a huge need for some weapons because as we sit here, Allen Robinson's gone, Jakeem Grant is gone, Marquise Goodwin and Damiere Byrd are both free agents. Put another way, there ain't a lot to pick from in terms of the wide receivers. So Byron Pringle, who you mentioned, Amanda, had that outstanding season for the Chiefs last year. It now comes over to Chicago where he joins Equanimeous St. Brown and Daz Newsome, maybe, last year's day 3 pick out of UNC, who didn't have much of a chance to show his talents. He will certainly get that chance now. So I think Byron Pringle is a huge get for a team in Chicago that lost a lot of players, that moved on from a lot of players for salary cap reasons. Pringle also offers something in the kick return game, so that's an added bonus. But, I mean, the overall takeaway is it's going to be tough sledding for the Bears. They need a lot of things to go right between now and the draft the rest of the free agency signing period and then turning things on in September. But I think Pringle gives Justin Fields a much-needed weapon on an offense that is lacking in the playmaker department outside of perhaps David Montgomery, the running back, and, of course, Cole Kmet, the former second-round pick at tight end.
A little tough for the Bears, a little tough for the Lions as well. John Breach, Chris House is about to take over. I feel like we have collectively picked on you the most, so we're going to give you the final say when it comes to the most underrated move the Lions made in free agency.
You know what? The Lions have been making headlines all offseason. They get to host the draft in 2024. They're going to be on Hard Knocks. And one guy we're going to see on Hard Knocks is my most underrated signing, which is the re-signing of Charles Harris. Look, Harris was not a great NFL player through his first 4 seasons, had average career in Miami, average career in Atlanta. The Lions decided, hey, we're going to give this guy a 1-year prove-it deal for the 2021 season, and he proved it on his prove-it deal. He went out, led the team in sacks with 7.5. And so this is a player that seems to be getting better year after year. The Lions didn't have to pay much to keep him. I think it was a 2-year, $14 million deal. So when you're getting a guy who tallied over 7 sacks under contract at that price, that is a good move. And he has the type of attitude that Dan Campbell likes. I'm sure Harris has bitten off a few kneecaps in practice. So I like this move for the Lions.
Gentlemen, it has been a pleasure. Chris Hassel about to join you here in a second. I do want to mention the Big Six podcast where you can find Ryan Wilson and John Breach as well. How do you feel?
Well, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were on their way to being just another team again when Tom Brady decided retirement would have to wait. They are now one of the Super Bowl favorites once again, just a season removed from his Super Bowl title. The Buccaneers with the second best odds to win it all, only behind the Buffalo Bills. Bills at 7-1, Bucs at 8-1. Tampa, the favorite in the NFC, ahead of the Packers and defending champion Rams. Bryant McFadden, Ryan Wilson, John Breach with underrated free agent moves for the NFC South. And let's start with the team that is likely to run away with the NFC South, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Ryan, it's a 5th former New England teammate of Tom Brady's to join the Bucs.
That's right, Chris. I'm going with Logan Ryan, who actually intercepted Tom Brady's last pass when Tom Brady was a member of the New England Patriots. They're back together again. Logan, a former member of the Patriots, as you mentioned, played for the Giants last year, the Titans before that, and plays at a high level. He's incredibly smart. He moved from cornerback to safety. They only have 2 other cornerbacks on the roster, Antoine Winfield and Mike Edwards, who play a good amount. So if you're looking for this big nickel, these 3 safety sets, Logan Ryan is your guy. He can play in the slot, he can play deep, and he bolsters a secondary that has 8 guys headed for free agency after next season, and he adds some depth there. I like it a lot. It's a cheap deal, and it helps solidify that defense on the back end. They could look to add some help up front. And Ndamukong Suh is still a free agent. They have Vita Vea, of course. They may want to add something there. They can do that through the draft. But in terms of bolstering the secondary, I really like the underrated nature of bringing on Logan Ryan.
Overwhelming favorites in that division. Not sure anybody else in that division even makes the postseason. The Saints might be that other team to contend. Jameis Winston is back, reportedly moving Taysom Hill to tight end. BMAC, what's an offseason free agency move that kind of went under the radar that you like?
Well, he was the most expensive free agent on the defensive side, but this is a under the radar move because how big this move was for the New Orleans Saints, and that's adding Marcus May, talented young safety from the New York Jets. The reason why this is a huge move, they lost Marcus Williams to free agency to the Baltimore Ravens. Now bringing in a guy like Marcus May, he has the knowledge, he has the instincts, and outside of the injuries that he has been dealing with throughout his career, he's been a productive player. He's a guy that not only can play in the third level, but he's a second level guy as well, can be in the box from time to time, and he's a tackling machine. So looking at what they needed to do when they lost Marcus Williams, I'm not saying he's the same player as Marcus, but yet and still he can give you some of the same production, and I think he will be able to do so for the organization this season.
Yeah, I agree with BMAC that you lost your safety, you need to replace him, obviously. But I am going to go with a different underrated signing. Is the former president of the Andy Dalton fan club. I am going with Andrew Gregory Dalton. Look, Jameis Winston tore his ACL in October. We don't know for sure that he is going to be ready in week 1. So what Dalton does is he gives the Saints some insurance at quarterback in case Jameis isn't ready to go. So I thought that was an underrated signing by the Saints.
All right. Andy Dalton is the pick from John Breach. Just wait. he's got a crazier one coming up. Let's move to the Atlanta Falcons here as we give the guys an opportunity to give us some under-the-radar free agent pickups. And, Ryan, you're going with a running back for Atlanta.
Yeah, Chris, the only thing sadder than John Breach consistently propping up Andy Dalton is the current situation on Atlanta's offense. Mike Ryan is gone. Their best running back is Cordero Patterson, who's a really good player, but he came into the league as a wide receiver / returner. I'm going with Damian Williams, who played previously for the Chiefs last year. He played for the Bears, and he has some good numbers when he's been used. He's been used sparingly. He's more of a change of pace back, but that's something that can come in handy in that offense, and now it's going to feature Marcus Mariota. He's an asset in the pass game, which is something you're going to need on an offense without Calvin Ridley, where the only real true threat is Kyle Pitts, the second-year the tight end. And when your number one receiver is either Auden Tate or Olamide Zacchaeus, you have to sort of figure out what the offense is going to look like. So I think Damian Williams and the versatility he brings is incredibly important to an offense that, as we sit here, looks like it's going to struggle. But I think adding someone like Williams will make things slightly easier for Arthur Smith, who had all that success in Tennessee with both Ryan Tannehill and the running back situation there. So perhaps he can bring some of that magic to Atlanta in a team that's facing long odds to have a lot of success in 2022.
Yeah, only good thing about the Falcons is that the other three teams in the division get to play the Falcons twice, like the Panthers. Maybe they can help save Matt Rule's job. Breach, your underrated, under-the-radar pickup, you guessed it, a kicker.
Hassel, it's a punter. Don't mix them up.
No, it's a punter.
No
sorry.
one
Kickers are all the same to me. It's a kicker.
Obviously, I can tell. But no one ever talks about punters in free agency, and this punter is Johnny Hekker. Look, the Rams cut him earlier this offseason. One team's trash is another team's treasure because the Panthers went out and they signed him. This guy has been one of the best punters in the NFL over the past decade, and it's not like he's really gone downhill. He finished 4th in the NFL in net punting average, which is your all-important punting stat. And guess what? He signed with a bad team. You know who punts a lot? Bad team. So Johnny Hekker is going to get a lot of work in 2022, and the Panthers absolutely upgraded the punting position, which is great news for this bad team.
Boy, that's just, if you're a Panther fan, if you're a Falcons fan, I don't think we're giving you much hope, but we're giving you some. If you play fantasy football and you involve a punter, maybe Johnny Hekker with the Panthers is for you. Let's move from one South division to the other. In the AFC, let's start with the Titans, who were the #1 overall seed in the AFC last season. And B-Mac, we were asking for under-the-radar picks here. You went with what I think is the biggest move of the offseason for the Titans, trading for Robert Woods.
No question. Trading for Robert Woods. And it might not be household news throughout the National Football League, but for Tennessee, this is huge. The reason why this is an under-the-radar move for the Tennessee Titans, we all know what they have at the #1 wide receiver position in A.J. Brown, but they've been trying to find consistency coming from the #2 guy. They added Julio Jones. He was out of the lineup more than in, didn't get the production they thought they would get from him. But get this, Mr. Robert Woods, and I understand he's coming off an ACL injury, but outside of that year, he's been healthy throughout his professional career. He is a football player. He can be implemented in the running game. He's a guy that can do damage in between the numbers at the slot via reverses, all of the above. He does nothing but give you production, and I think he will coexist nicely with A.J. Brown and give Ryan Tannehill another consistent target to rely on. So I love this move. Like you said, they traded for him, but yet and still, this was a huge need for the Tennessee Titans, and he will be healthy by the start of the season, and you better believe he will be doing numbers for the organization.
But a lot of people are going to be picking the Indianapolis Colts in this division, because of what they did by going out and trading for Matt Ryan. Ryan, what is a move that you like that the Colts did, an underrated move this offseason?
Tight end Mo Alley-Cox, bringing him back. Mo Alley-Cox the last 2 years averaged 55 receptions for just over 700 yards and 6 touchdowns. Most of that production came 2 years ago with Phillip Rivers, not so much last year with Carson Wentz. That's why Carson Wentz is now in Washington and Matt Ryan's new quarterback. And you know what Matt Ryan loves? Tight ends. He's had Tony Gonzalez. He's had Kyle Pitts in Atlanta. And now he'll have an opportunity to lean on Mo Alley Cox. T.Y. Hilton is unsigned. It's not clear if he's going to come back. They have Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell, of course. But I think the tight end position is going to become even more important in this offense with Matt Ryan. Jack Doyle retired. So there's a need there and not much depth after Mo Alley Cox. They have Colin Granson, last year's day 3 pick out of SMU. But I think you can expect Mo Alley Cox to be a big part of the offense, the passing offense, especially given Matt Ryan's history of leaning on these tight ends.
Well, for me, the most underrated move for the Indianapolis Colts is signing Matt Pryor to a one-year deal. Only started 5 games, but the reason why this is an underrated move because if he flourishes to be an outstanding, consistent left tackle, their offense will do numbers. Matt Ryan will have a successful season, but if he flops and does not play well, Matt Ryan won't play well as well. We know how important the left tackle is to the quarterback, especially a quarterback that lacks mobility like Matt Ryan, who is a true pocket quarterback. This is a huge move, and I thought they would probably look elsewhere to try to address the left tackle position, but they decided to keep it in-house, and let's see if this is a huge, nice move for the Colts or a successful drop for the Colts.
Speaking of drop, should be a big drop-off from those top 2, Colts and Titans, to the other 2 teams, the Jags and the Texans. For the Texans, Breach, I'm looking at the transaction wire. I don't see any major kicker, punter, or holder news. What's your underrated pickup?
Yeah, so I had to go somewhere else, Hassel, and I went to the offensive line. Look, this isn't a sexy move, but I like that they signed Justin Britt, re-signed him to a 2-year deal. Look, you want your center back. Last year was his first season with the Texans. He was absolutely a serviceable center on the offensive line in the 11 games he played. He brings a veteran leadership, which is something you need when you have a young roster and especially a young quarterback like the Texans will with Davis Mills.
Okay, one more team. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars. Ryan, an interesting team because they have made maybe the most moves of anyone this offseason.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going with Foley Fatukasi, who actually signed a big money deal, the former Jet defensive tackle. He's going to clog up the middle. He'll be great as a run stuffer, but he will also push the pocket in pass rushing situations, which makes life easy for Josh Allen, the edge rusher from Kentucky, and Calebon Chason, who's looking to find his form after being the first-round pick out of LSU a few years ago. So I think that's incredibly important to what the Jaguars want to do in a division where you have to find ways to stop Jonathan Taylor. This is a great way to do it. And, oh, by the way, if you end up drafting Aiden Hutchinson at the top, you have another edge rusher who can lean on this pick, this signing, to make that defense, that front 4, even better.
And Ryan has his brand new mock draft up on CBSSports.com. Hutchinson is the #1 overall pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars in that mock. His first quarterback goes to the Panthers at 6 overall, Malik Willis, the first QB off the board, followed by Kenny Pickett to the Falcons at number 8 overall. This Cowboys offseason has been defined more by their departures than their additions. They traded away Amari Cooper, and they also failed to bring back guys like Randy Gregory, Lyle Collins, who have gone elsewhere in free agency. With Cooper's departure, this is what the Cowboys have at wide receiver heading into the season. The good news is that it is a wide receiver heavy draft, so they could replenish Dak's targets in the NFL draft. These are the offseason moves for the Cowboys so far. They did re-sign Michael Gallup, and they did sign defensive end Dante Fowler Jr. Let's bring in Bryant McFadden, Ryan Wilson, and John Breach and go through the NFC East, beginning with the Dallas Cowboys for underrated moves in free agency. And B-Mac, it's a rare opportunity for you to go to the offensive side of the ball here.
And I'm going to take advantage of it, Chris. I'm going James Washington as the most underrated signing for the Dallas Cowboys, and here's why. They lost Amari Cooper. You talked about the team trading him to the Cleveland Browns. They lost Cedric Wilson. He signed with the Miami Dolphins. Michael Gallup was their big signing at the wide receiver position, but remember, he's coming off a season-ending knee injury. We don't know where he will be health-wise by the start of the season. So we know who the #1 is. That's CeeDee Lamb. But let's say Michael Gallup is not 100% healthy. That puts more pressure on James Washington. And James Washington has come out on record saying he didn't have an opportunity to really show what type of player he was while playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But get this, he will have an opportunity to show who he is as a wide receiver. And hopefully he's able to take advantage of those said opportunities because they will need James Washington to stand up and show out every opportunity he gets because of the lack of depth at the wide receiver position, especially if Gallup is not healthy by the start of the season.
Eagles going to try to push him in that division. They have those 3 top 20 picks. Ryan, you're going with a wide receiver as well for Philadelphia.
That's right, Chris, and we could see the Eagles use one of those 3 picks that you mentioned on wide receiver, but for now, I love the addition of Zach Pascal on a small money deal. He's going to join Jalen Reagor, the former first-round pick. He'll join Devontae Smith, the other former first-round pick, and Quez Watkins to be the 4th wide receiver in that crew. They have Dallas Goedert as well, the tight end. And Zach Pascal is a fantastic route runner. He's incredibly dangerous on those short and intermediate passes within 20 yards of the line of scrimmage. I think he'll serve as a safety blanket for Jalen Hurts, while those other guys we mentioned will be patrolling the deep half of the field, and obviously Goddard down the seam. So I love the addition of Pascal. He can come in and play right away. Even if you draft a wide receiver at some point, they don't have to play immediately. You have Pascal for that reason, and he's been extremely consistent with his time in Indianapolis, and I expect that to continue with Philadelphia.
Let's move on to the Washington Commanders, and those fans can't feel too happy this week after hearing what the Colts said about how they totally wasted last season by making a huge mistake on Carson Wentz. Hey, Carson Wentz is the new quarterback. Breach, you're going with someone who's helping to protect him and open up the run game.
Yeah, the Commanders are hitching their wagon to Carson Wentz this season, which is definitely not a wagon I would be hitching to. But that being said, if you are going to have Carson Wentz as your quarterback, you need some protection for him, especially because you let your best offensive lineman, Brandon Scherf, walk in free agency. You cut Eric Flowers. You don't have any guards. So what is their underrated signing? It is signing a guard, Andrew Norwell. Took him in free agency from Jacksonville. One reason I really like this signing is because it reunites him with Ron Rivera. The first 4 years of Norwell's career were in Carolina with Rivera. The two went to Super Bowl 50 together. So I do think that he can make an instant impact on that offensive line. So I like this signing a lot for the Commanders.
Okay, the New York Giants now, and Ryan Wilson is going to give us a player that was underrated that the Giants picked up in free agency. Who is it?
It's running back Matt Breida. Last year for Buffalo, the year before that for Miami. He didn't do a whole lot, but previously with his time with San Francisco, he was a home run hitter, and I think that's what he brings to this Giants team. Saquon Barkley has been rumored to be trade bait at points during this offseason. He's in the final year of his deal. Are the Giants going to give him that 5th-year option? There are a ton of questions. Either way, you need depth behind Saquon Barkley, and it's not going to be just Gary Brightwell. Last year, Devontae Booker was 2nd on that team in rushing. He's currently a free agent. 3rd on the team in rushing for the Giants, Danny Dimes, and that's not what you want. If you're building this new team as a new head coach and general manager, you want to allow Danny Dimes to stand back there and make the plays we have yet to see him make. I think Matt Breida brings some of that in terms of the backfield, working alongside Saquon Barkley. He's not going to be a guy that carries the ball 250 times, but he can be an outlet in the pass game and spell Saquon Barkley at times during the game.
Yeah, and I like Ryan mentioning this signing because it does help Daniel Jones. Danny Dimes needs as much help as he can get, and he needs to be able to prove that he can play and that he can be the Giants quarterback in the future. I think 2 signings will help the Giants figure that out, and they're both on the offensive line. 1, John Feliciano. 2, Mark Lewinsky. 2 guys who will be starters and who will be upgrades compared to what the Giants had last season.
From the NFC East to the AFC East, and the Buffalo Bills, who are the Super Bowl favorites after going out and getting Von Miller. Ryan, give us an underrated free agency move in Buffalo.
It's another former first-round pick, but it's tight end O.J. Howard, who never really found his groove in Tampa Bay with Tom Brady, which is a weird thing to say. His best seasons came in 18 and 19, where he had 34 receptions each year. He'll join a Bills team where Dawson Knox is the number 1, but O.J. Howard has the ability to catch the ball down the field. He's a really good run blocker, and I think he's going to fit in well with that offense that's going to have Josh Allen slinging the ball to everyone, including O.J. Howard, who could have his best year yet in the NFL.
So many of these AFC championship contenders made huge moves, including the Buffalo Bills. Patriots fans are saying, what did we do? B-Mac, give them something to feel good about.
The underrated signing for the New England Patriots is bringing back Malcolm Butler. You know why this is an underrated signing? Number 1, they lost J.C. Jackson, one of the more talented ball-hawking corners in the National Football League. But outside of losing your number 1 corner, think about this. The division now, the AFC East has become more explosive. We know about Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, but now you got the Cheetah, Tyreek Hill, Waddle, all these guys down in Miami, sunny Miami, getting ready to try to light secondaries up. And if you didn't have a nice guy an experienced guy that can command the #1 spot in your secondary at the cornerback position, good luck in trying to be successful. And oh, get this, they didn't have to break the bank to bring Malcolm Butler back. And clearly he loves playing under Bill Belichick. He had a lot of success there before leaving to go to Tennessee. I think this was a huge get that no one is talking about for the New England Patriots.
Speaking of Miami, Breach, who's an underrated player the Dolphins brought in?
Chris, can a quarterback be considered an underrated signing? Because that, I am going to say that their underrated signing was bringing in Teddy Bridgewater. Look, we've seen what Tua has done in Miami. He's been injury prone throughout his career, and you have so many offensive weapons that you need to make sure your backup quarterback, you need someone who you can trust to send in if anything happens to Tua. So I think this is a good insurance plan for Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins.
All right, and Ryan, close us out here with the JETS, Jets.
Former Bengals great C.J. Uzomah is now in New York with the Jets. He came off a career year last year. He had over 40 receptions. He'll join Tyler Conklin from the Vikings, who had 60 receptions combined. It's 100 tight end receptions, and that's exactly what you want to give your young quarterback in terms of security blanket in Zach Wilson. So I love the signing here. He's incredibly athletic. He's a really good blocker. He makes plays at all three levels, and I think he's going to help that offense that obviously sputtered for much of last season. They've improved the offensive line. Now they get Zach Wilson some playmakers in the middle of the field. I love the C.J. Uzomah signing.
Yeah, hopefully Wilson could take a few steps forward in his sophomore season. Fellas, thank you so much here on CBS Sports HQ as the guys give us their underrated moves this free agency for all 32 teams. Pick Six Podcast is where you can hear all those fellas for much more in-depth conversations. Will Brinson is the host. Very latest episode centers on the new overtime rule in the postseason and how it'll affect things, how it could affect things moving forward in the postseason. All Things Covered is Bryant McFadden's podcast with Patrick Peterson. Their latest episode has Casey Hayward on how the Falcons nearly landed Deshaun Watson.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.